Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I know it's been quite a while. I've been busy with school and there has not been too much election stuff in the news, but things are once again picking up, so I'm going to try and make some more videos. Today's video is about the Virginia governor's race. There are two major and now a third off-year governor's race. In Virginia, in New Jersey, and now, because the recall was just declared, California this fall or winter will have a recall election. I will certainly do more than one video on that since I am a resident of the state of California. But let's get into the Virginia governor's race. So, to understand Virginia's history, we got to go way back to 1964. Which was the last time before 2008 that a Democrat won the state of Virginia. Virginia was solidly in Republican hands throughout the years. Republicans did very well. Even H.W. Bush won it, and then Dole won it. Bush won it pretty comfortably twice, but then Obama won it, and he won it by 6 points, likely because of the economic situation at the time. But Obama was the first candidate in a long, long time to win the state of Virginia. Then in 2012, it was much narrower. The economy was improving. Some people who had just cast their vote for Obama in 2008 because of the economy went back to the Republican side. Democrats improved, where they did similar in the D.C. suburbs. Republicans did decently well across the state, but Barack Obama won again by a much narrower margin, only 3 points. At the same time, Tim Kaine, who is the former governor at that point, this was actually a Democratic pickup, I believe, over George Allen, who I believe was the incumbent. But Tim Kaine won by 5 points. A couple years later, in 2016, Hillary Clinton won the state. She improved on Obama's margin. She won the state by about 5 points, a little over 5 points. She did not get to 50%, and she probably should have done better in the state of Virginia. There were definitely some rightward shifts and some leftward shifts in the state of Virginia. But she probably should have done better, given the fact that at the time, Virginia had a Democratic governor, and also her running mate, Tim Kaine, was the former governor, and at that time was the senator from the state of Virginia. So she probably could have done better than 5 points, but in politics, a win is a win. In 2018, Democrats did very well in Virginia. They picked up 3 House seats. First was in the D.C. suburbs. This was kind of a seat that was waiting to flip and eventually flipped, and it did. It flipped pretty big for Jennifer Wexton. She won this seat very well compared to most Democrats nationally who won tight races. She defeated Barbara Comstock, who was a kind of anti-Trump Republican. Then we have Abigail Spanberger, who defeated Dave Bratt. Dave Bratt primaried successfully Eric Cantor a couple years back and cost Eric Cantor his seat. That was Virginia 7, which is kind of the outskirts of Richmond, and I believe also, just the outskirts of Richmond, really. And then also in the Virginia Beach area, Elaine Loria, who I believe served some time in the military, flipped Virginia's 2nd district, who was formerly held by Scott Taylor. Virginia Beach used to be one of the most conservative parts of the state, and in 2018 they elected a Democratic congresswoman. Then we go to 2020, and all 3 of these congresswomen who flipped seats in 2018 held on in the Senate Mark Warner, the Democrat, won by 12 points over Daniel Gade, the Republican. And then on the presidential level, Joe Biden won this state by 10 points. It was a very big victory, basically putting Virginia in the likely column for Democrats. They will not have to worry so much about Virginia in the future. You have great Democratic turnout out of Alexandria and the immediate D.C. suburbs. The further D.C. suburbs, you have small towns across Virginia going blue. Charlottesville, where the university is. You have Richmond, the capital, going blue. Then you also have Norfolk and Virginia Beach now that go blue. And you have some rural counties that vote blue. And a lot of rural counties that aren't as Republican as they used to be. So Democrats this has been a 12-year process, but Democrats now are decently in control of the state of Virginia on the presidential level. On the governor's level, it's a little bit, here, let me just back this up. It's a little different. So, 1993, we had a Democratic president, Bill Clinton. Jim Gilmore, Republican, was elected. In 1997, not 93. In 2001, when we had a Republican, Virginia elected a Democratic governor, Mark Warner, who's the current senator. 2005, Republican president, Democratic governor, Tim Kaine, who's also now the senator. Then, in 2009, after Obama had just won this state for the first time, Democrats had won it for the first time in a long time, Bob McDonnell wins the state. 58-41, Democratic president, Republican governor. Then finally in 2013, Terry McAuliffe breaks the streak, but it was a very close election, and if the Libertarian didn't get as much support, one can guess that the Republican might have won, but Terry McAuliffe won. Then in 2017, Ralph Northam won the state by a pretty good margin, almost cementing that Virginia is a blue state. This is just 1 year after Hillary Clinton didn't do too well in the state. So to understand kind of the race, you have to understand Ralph Northam a little bit. He, in 2017 or 2018, he had a blackface scandal. He was getting calls to resign from across the nation. People wanted him out. It was called the Yearbook Incident. It was, I believe, him in medical school wearing blackface, which is extremely inappropriate and wrong. But Northam has kind of turned things around and almost been a progressive champion of sorts. He's definitely not a progressive, but he's done well getting progressive support. He has imposed tighter gun laws. He restored voting rights to felons. He abolished the death penalty and was the first southern state to do so. And he also legalized marijuana in the state. So he has kind of, Virginians like him. There's definitely still probably many in the African American community who can't get over the fact that he did blackface, which is completely understandable given America's history. But Ralph Northam, who had a much lower approval rate, is doing pretty well among Democrats and progressives. So now to the candidates. There are 4 or 5 main candidates in the 2021 Democratic primary, and this just started. There is Jennifer Carroll Foy, who is a member of the House of Delegates. She is fairly progressive. She is an African-American woman, and she would be the first African-American woman governor and the first African-American governor of the state of Virginia. She has received endorsements from Lauren Underwood, and Katie Porter, who are kind of both moderate and progressive Congress people from California and Illinois. And she's gotten some other endorsements. Emily's List, that's a pretty big endorsement. Sunrise Movement. So some pretty progressive organizations are throwing their support behind Jennifer Carroll Foy. Then there is Lee J. Carter, who is a Democratic Socialist and another member of the Virginia House of Delegates. He is basically at the bottom of the field. He only has Marianne Williamson's endorsement, and he is not doing too well. Then we have Justin Fairfax, who's the current lieutenant governor of the state of Virginia, and I believe he's the second African American elected statewide in Virginia. He's fairly young. He's only 42. He was not elected on the same ballot as Ralph Northam, but they've worked together these last 4 years to govern the state of Virginia. He surprisingly doesn't really have any endorsements, doesn't have a lot of traction. He is not, I wouldn't call him progressive, but I also wouldn't call him more centrist or moderate. He's kind of in the middle. Then we have Terry McAuliffe, who is the former governor of the state of Virginia. He was the governor between 2013-2017. He's the best name recognition. He is the most experienced. He was DNC chair. He was chair of the DGA. He has a long career in Virginia politics, and he was decently popular in his term. He has gotten kind of the big endorsements. Elaine Luria, who is that congressperson we mentioned from Virginia Beach, Nancy Pelosi, Ralph Northam, who's the governor. So the governor endorsed Terry McAuliffe. He's by far the front runner. He has a lot of endorsements, including, I think it was just today, the Washington Post. Then there is Jennifer McClellan, who's also, who would also be the first female governor of the state of Virginia. She is co-chair of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. She is an African-American woman, and she is also fairly progressive, and she has gotten some endorsements also. If we look at polling data, this is really Terry McAuliffe's race to lose. He is strongly in the lead. He has great name recognition. I've personally heard him speak. He's a great speaker. He kind of described himself as fiscally conservative, but also very socially liberal. Maybe fiscally moderate would be a better way to put it. He's got the money, he's got the name recognition, and he's also kind of really the only moderate centrist candidate. And Virginia is not a progressive state. 3 Democratic congresswomen we mentioned that picked up seats in 2018. Neither Jennifer Wexton, Abigail Spanberger, and Elaine Luria, neither of them we could consider progressive. So you have Jennifer Carroll Foy, Lee Carter, Justin Fairfax, and Jennifer McClellan kind of splitting that pretty small amount of the vote in Virginia that is more left-leaning and more progressive. So this is Terry McAuliffe's race to lose. And I think that he will win the Democratic primary, and I think he'll go on to be elected governor come November. Now, on the Republican side, there's only really 2 main people. There is Amanda Chase. She is a current member of the Virginia State Senate. She was at the insurrection. She called the rioters patriots, and she thought that President Trump might be sworn in. She is a far-right Republican. She is the Trump Republican in this race. And there's a decent chance that she actually does win the Virginia Republican primary. At the same time, you have Kirk Cox, who is more centrist, kind of your more classic conservative. He's definitely more experienced. He was Speaker of the Virginia House of Delegates and the Majority Leader for a while. And he is definitely more of a centrist. He is more experienced. If you go to their websites, kind of good to see the difference. If you go to the issues, you have kind of ending one-party control, creating jobs, Virginia safe, standing up for life. He's kind of your more classic, prototypical conservative. Then when you go to Amanda Chase's website, you see that she wants to make Virginia great again. So in this race, actually, this Republican primary will be a good kind of way to see how the future is going to go for the kind of conservatives and moderates versus Trump Republicans. So we'll have to see who wins the Republican primary. I really don't know. Amanda Chase is leading in some polls, Kirk Cox in some others. We will have to see. Kirk Cox has definitely gotten more endorsements, including George Allen, who is the former governor and senator from the state of Virginia. Amanda Chase, the pro-Trump Republican, has gotten Michael Flynn, who was the Trump's national security advisor, endorsement. So, given all of that, and given McAuliffe, given the nature of the Democratic primary, and given that you either have a pro-Trump candidate or a, just more conservative, even if it is Kirk Cox versus Terry McAuliffe, I still think McAuliffe's going to do well. I think everything we've seen with Virginia over the last 12 years has hinted that in this election, it's going to go blue. And I would say that if it is Terry McAuliffe versus Amanda Chase, it will be safe. If it is Terry McAuliffe versus Kirk Cox, probably won't be safe, but it'll probably be lean. I have confidence that either way, probably if it's McAuliffe versus Chase, I think that McAuliffe could win by above, anything between, well, we just saw how big Mark Warner won. I think McAuliffe could win over 15 points over Amanda Chase. If it's Kirk Cox, probably somewhere between 8 and 15 points, maybe 7 and 15 points. But still, I fully expect Terry McAuliffe to win. He has the endorsements. He has the name recognition. He has the endorsement of the current governor. He is, I believe, even the Biden endorsement. And he is poised to become the next governor of the state of Virginia, a state that over the last 12, 15 years has gone from blue to red. All right, so that is all for this video. Stay tuned. I'll be making a much shorter video about the New Jersey governor race, and I'll be making some future videos over the next couple months leading up to these 2021 elections. All right, that is all.